بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق أجمعين سيدنا محمد عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم وبعد. So how many of you submitted the quiz today? Or since we sent it? 3, 4? Did submit it. Yeah. Okay. 5, 6? Okay. And how about the rest? Okay, the rest who didn't, did they have the intention to do it? What? I don't know, but you didn't get the email? Ah, okay. Okay, so the rest who didn't do it, did they have the intention to do the quiz? You guys had the intention to do it? How can we know if you had the intention to do it? Can you prove your intention that? What?
I did not get it.
You didn't get it? You didn't get an email? No. Are you sure? Last time you didn't get it too?
Last time I didn't get it. So I did it with her last time.
So maybe your email is not registered. Did you make sure that they have your email?
I think it's not on the sign-up sheet.
Okay, you can do that after the class. You just please make sure that your email is listed, inshallah. Okay, so we'll try to go over the questions. Okay, so it is the second quiz. So it was over the last two lectures, Usul al-Fiqh, and maybe the second half of the fiqh lecture or the fiqh slides. So if you have a certain realization of something that is not identical to reality, what is it called? If you remember the map of the realization, you have a certain and uncertain, and then under each there are multiple categories. So you are certain about something, but it is not identical to reality. Compounded? Ignorance? Okay. Yeah. Anybody else has another opinion? Is knowledge? But it is not identical to reality. Yeah, so knowledge has to be identical to reality, right? Again, it's the certain realization that is identical to reality and based on a proof, or based on an evidence. That's the definition of knowledge. So if it's a certain realization that is not identical to reality, that means you are certain about something, you are very sure about something, but this thing doesn't exist, or this thing is not true. Because what is there in reality is actually against what you're thinking. Okay? That's the compounded ignorance. That's the right answer. That we said before, the compounded ignorance is that you do know something and you do not know that you do not know something. Right? So when you are 100% sure that it is snowing out there right now and it is not snowing, that's compounded ignorance, because you do know and you do know that you don't know. So this is the meaning of the compounded ignorance. Okay, anything for which one is rewarded if performed and punished if omitted. This is the definition of one of these four categories of the ahkam. Obligation, right. Okay, what if you want to define the recommendation? What would we change in the definition? Obligation means the wujub, right? The wajib, yes.
It would be the same beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and not punished if
And not
punished if omitted.
and not punished if omitted. Okay. And these categories of ahkam, what do we call them? If you remember, we have the two types of ahkam. What do we call the 5 categories? Again, we had 2 main types of ahkam, of rulings. And under each one, there are multiple categories and kinds. So the obligation, the recommendation, the permissibility, these 5, they all come under one title. What do we call them? الحكم حكم التكليفي أحكام التكليفية أو الحكم التكليفي. The creating duty حكم. Okay, returning a derived case back to the original case due to an apparent cause that joins them together in the ruling. Analogy? Okay, can you give us an example? Smoking? Okay, and which thing you based the hukm of smoking on? حرمت? Okay, and the prohibition of smoking is based on the qiyas and the khaba'ith. So it's not exactly like this. It's on. Okay, smoking is not haram by qiyas. Maybe smoking like intoxicant is a haram by qiyas. That's what you mean, right? Not any smoking in general. So something that leads to intoxication to this effect is going to be haram. With the qiyas, with the analogy on the khamr and alcohol, because it's already prohibited by Quran. And then there is a illah, which is the apparent cause, and this apparent cause, if it appears in any other thing, it will take the same hukum. That's the analogy. Okay, the four madhabs are the best legal schools of thought because they are. Which of these four things? All of the above. Okay. It is fard kifaya, a communal obligation to have at least one pure generational error. I think a lot of people got confused about this and the answers. So what do you think is the most important to be a communal obligation that a community is responsible to provide of those people based on the definitions we had last time? Mufti? What? Mujtahid within the school? Okay. Any other ideas? Which is higher in rank, the mufti or the mujtahid within the school? What is the difference between mujtahid within the school and a mufti?
Is a mujtahid within the school and one of the schools of thought?
Yes, within the school it means one of the schools of thought for sure. Okay, what is the difference between mujtahid within the school and a mufti?
Mufti has knowledge of all of the schools and lives in your community, so he understands your circumstances, giving the ruling.
But can we have a mufti of one school of thought? And he's still called a mufti, like a mufti, but he gives fatwas according to a Hanafi madhab, for example. Yeah, so I mean, it's not a condition for the mufti to be well-learned on all the different schools of thought, right? Yeah, so it's the correct answer is the mufti, but there is a difference between a mufti and the mujtahid within the school. From a perspective, mujtahid within the school is in a higher rank than the mufti, because he excels in his own school and he understands all the principles and the usul and he makes ijtihad. Sometimes the mufti doesn't do a full process of ijtihad. Sometimes the mufti makes a kind of a partial process of ijtihad that he would link between what he knows of his own madhab and a school of thought he studied and between the current modern contemporary issue that he's facing. He just applying whatever is documented in his traditional books to whatever case that he's facing. That's still an ijtihad, but it's not a full process, right? He's not relating whatever he's facing to a text of Quran or Sunnah or a nas or an evident text. He's actually relating it to a hukm that has already existed before that was said by one of the schools of thought. So it is from that perspective, it's in a lower rank than the mujtahid within the school. Okay, usul al-fiqh is based on multiple other disciplines like what? Brothers, can you participate once in a while? Which one of the four? All of the above? Okay, good. Okay, two types of legal rulings. 1 and 2. Okay, that's correct. The one that we were just talking about, the hukm taklifi, the 5 categories come under them, right? The obligation, the permissibility, the recommendation, and all the rest. Okay, ritual purity for prayer is an example of a legal cause, prerequisite, impediment, concession. Prerequisite, shart. True. Can you give an example for a legal cause? For sabab? Another example.
To come in with prayer time.
The coming?
of the prayer time.
The coming of the prayer time is a sabab for what?
For salah.
For the obligation of the salah of that time, right? So sunset is a legal cause for the obligation of Salatul Maghrib for the mukallaf, for the Muslim, right? That's a legal cause for it. Okay, I think you answered this question already. So this is the sunset. I forgot that's the following question. So that will be sabab, legal cause, right? Okay. Combining between madhab's opinions.
Permissible within limits and conditions.
What?
Permissible within limits and conditions.
Permissible within limits and conditions. What are these limits and conditions?
To not take the easy way out of each one.
And not pick and choose.
To not
Okay.
perform.
Not pick and choose. Can you give a more practical example for this? Yeah.
It has to follow at least one, so one of them has to accept it.
Mhm. Exactly. One of them at least has to accept it. You can just combine a new scenario that doesn't exist in any of the four schools, for example. That's the very important condition. Okay, is it obligatory to follow a madhab?
No.
No. Everybody says no. What? It's recommended. Okay, it's no. The Prophet ﷺ only delivered the Quran and the Sunnah as texts. Then we deduce the methods of understanding ourselves. Just pay attention to this question.
It's false. Yeah, this one we read a million times.
False or true? Why false?
Because the methods of understanding,
Who remembers an example from the seerah or the sunnah we gave about this?
The seerah of what? I'm sorry.
We give an example about this in the sunnah. When we talk about these methods of understanding, so you guys agree that it's false? So that means he delivered both.
Yeah.
He delivered some texts and he delivered some ways at least of understanding these texts, right? Can you give an example of a situation or a story that he did deliver the way people should interact with the Nas or with the Hadith or with the Quran? ايش؟ صلوا كما رأيتموني أصلي. So what was he teaching them by this?
Is the way to do prayers is actions. Showing them through actions instead of just
Showing them the actions, how to follow action, how actions are actually a source of tashri'ah or a source of ahkam, right? This is what you mean, right?
yeah.
Okay, that's an example.
The Prophet said, my ummah doesn't agree on something wrong, so that shows ijma.
That shows ijma', and that shows what in terms of this question?
So one of the ways to understand is ijma.
So we can understand that there is one of the ways that we derive rulings is through the consensus of Muslims, right? Okay. Do you remember the story of the Sahabi who understood the ayah of fasting? Yes, of the white and black threads? That was a story because he taught him how to understand it,
Yeah.
right? And the ayah when Allah said, those who believed and they didn't mix the belief with dhulm. And the Sahaba thought that their all life is ruined because of this ayah that everybody has dhulm. And then he taught them how to understand an ayah in the Quran through another ayah. He told them that's already mentioned another ayah in the Quran. So all these were methods that he taught them, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, fiqh is concerned with the methods of of deduction of the Shari'i rulings.
This one is false. Oh, yeah.
True or false?
False. False.
False. Can I get everybody to answer, please? So who says true? Who says true? Can you just raise your hand, please? One. Okay, who says it's false? Okay, the neutral people who do not raise their hands in either. Did they suggest any third option? Okay, so why is it true?
The way I understood it is it's a way of extracting knowledge from the Sharia.
So that's the job of fiqh. Mhm. Okay, so those who said it's false, how can you make it correct? We do what? We add usul al-fiqh, exactly. So this is the job of usul al-fiqh, not fiqh. We spent pretty good time last time about this, right? We said usul al-fiqh is concerned about these methods of deduction, but fiqh is actually the fruit of this, right? It's the knowledge of the rulings themselves. Okay, the first historical written book or work on usul al-fiqh was the book of al-Risala of Imam Malik.
False.
Okay, can we see hands? Who says true? True? 2. Anybody else said true? 3. Okay, who said false? Okay, I'm not accepting anybody who's not going to raise his hand in one of the both options. So please, everybody raise his hand. Again, who says that's false? Okay, I'm going to assume that the rest are saying it's true. Right? Are you okay with this? Okay, so those who said it's true, I have 4, I think, who said it's true. Why is it true? I mentioned it last week. Okay, that's a good reason. Okay, anyone else? You said it's true, right? Who else said it's true? Yeah. Why is it true?
It's in your handout.
In my handout?
I think.
Ah, okay. So I said it and I wrote it. Okay, both evidences.
I
Okay.
think I read that.
Yeah. Okay. Same thing.
They said.
They said it. Okay. Any other thoughts? So okay, so I did say it as the book of Al-Risala, but I said it's by Imam Shafi'i, not by Imam Malik, right? So you got confused by the author. Yeah, it's true. Kitab al-Risala is the first work on Usul al-Fiqh, but that was written by Imam Malik, by Imam Shafi'i, sorry, not by Imam Malik. Imam Malik, we mentioned him. You guys will find his name in the slides of fiqh, right? About what? About al-Muwatta, as one of the first books on fiqh, right? It's a hadith book, by the way. Muwatta is a classification of hadith book. But he made the order of the chapters of this book on the fiqhi chapters and the fiqhi topics. So it's a mix of hadith and fiqh book. But in history, we say that's one of the first and the earliest works on fiqh was the Muwatta of Imam Malik. But on Usul al-Fiqh, that is the very famous opinion is that Kitab al-Risala, Imam Shafi'i was the first one. Okay, one of the debatable sources of legislation is the practice of the people of Al-Madinah, specifically the early generations. Because we said, those who said about this, they said we're talking about the early generations of the people of Al-Madinah. True or false? Okay, who says it's true? Can you please raise your hand? So I will eliminate the people who said it's true. I'm going to pick on the people who said it's false. So who said it's false? Sister Mariam, you said it's false, right? You didn't raise your hand. So why is it false? One of the debatable sources of legislation is the practice of the people of Al-Madinah. True or false? True? True? You change your mind? Why is it true?
One was the practice and one was the literature.
The question is about the debatable source. Because we have agreed upon sources and we have debatable sources. Right? So what are the agreed upon sources? Quran, Sunnah, Ijma', the consensus, and the analogy, which is the qiyas. Anything else is debatable source. Debatable means that doesn't mean it's a weak source. It means the schools of thought have different opinions about it. Right? This is one of them. So that's true because some madhahib, some schools of thought, they took the practice of the people of Medina as a source of legislation. Others didn't do that. So for example, what is the most famous school that adopted this opinion? Imam Malik, right? And he was the Imam of Al-Madinah. That's why, yeah, that's one of the reasons why he held this opinion. So switching between madhabs in different separate issues for life easiness is allowed. Okay, who says it's true? Hands, please. Okay, so why is it false?
Because the easiness is, so you're picking and choosing.
Because easiness. Okay. Any other thoughts here on people who said it's false? Yeah. Because the easiness part. So it's gonna be false because of the easiness part. Okay, what if it's because it's easy, but it doesn't contradict any, like a clear hukum, or it does go and fit with the rulings of the majority of the madhahib? Let's say I found two opinions. That's a scenario. I found two opinions. Each opinion is adopted by two schools of thought. So both opinions are mainly very strong and evidence-based because two full schools of thought have adopted one of both opinions, right? I'm gonna pick the easier one of both. Is that okay?
As long as you don't do it in everything.
What?
As long as you don't.
Yeah, and I'm avoiding the combination in the mix in the rejected way. So is it okay to have part of my intention to be the easiness?
Yes, why not?
Is it okay? Okay, so yeah, if this is part of your intention, that's fine. As long as you are not combining between more than one opinion to come up with a new scenario that is not going to work according to at least one school, as you mentioned already, and there is a valid school of thought, like a strong school of thought, at least one school of thought who adopted this opinion, right? Or like, I mean, a group of scholars who are really credible to say this. Okay, empirical science, yes.
So it's false, right?
No, it is true. Yeah.
So can you change between the different methods just to suit your life?
Yes, with these conditions. The same answer for this question, when you said, was it that far back? When you said permissible, yeah, this is number 10. Permissible within limits and conditions. Yes.
So if you're always
So combining between madhab's opinions is permissible within limits and conditions, even if it's for easiness, as long as I'm taking care of these conditions. Again, it's a valid opinion that is said by a school of thought or like a group of scholars, and I'm avoiding any kind of mix or combination that would lead to a new scenario that there is no school of thought who would approve it.
Can you explain before that you can't just take the easy way of every method?
In the same thing to come up with, this is the rest of the scenario. I cannot take the easy thing. Okay, I'll give the example of the nullifiers of wudu, right? So we cannot make all the nullifiers of the wudu and then you go pray because each one of the things that you did is okay according to one of the schools of thought. That's wrong. Because nobody with the schools of thought permits this. But let's say I had wudu. Okay, I had a full wudu. And then I want to pray. And then before the prayer, and I generally follow the Shafi'i school of thought. Or I generally follow the Hanafi school of thought. And then upon the prayer, I was hurt and I got bleeding. And I know this nullifies the wudu according to the Hanafi school. But for some reason, I just don't want to make wudu again. Because of easiness, because I don't want to make wudu again. So I say, you know what, my wudu and my salah is going to be still okay according to the Shafi'i school. Because my wudu was okay according to Hanafi and Shafi'i both. Now I lost the Hanafi, I still have the Shafi'i. Because they don't say that bleeding nullifies the wudu. Can I just still pray? And that's for the reason of easiness? Yes. That's the example for this. But there's a point here. So if this person has to pray, right? He can pray and he doesn't have to make wudu. But he has to remove the blood according to all of them. Yeah, because there's a difference between a nullifier of wudu and najasa. Nullifiers of wudu deal with, do you have to make wudu or not? Right? Sometimes a najasa, okay, so any example of a najasa, like blood for example, when some blood comes on your shirt, you don't have to make wudu, you just need to remove that. Right? Najasat, the impurities is something, and the nullifiers of wudu is another thing.
What if it's a bleeding wound?
What?
It's a bleeding wound.
It's a bleeding wound. This is the ikhtilaf among the madhahib. Does it break the wudu or not? But the blood is not just according to all of them. The actual liquid of blood is an impurity according to all the madhahib. So once it's on your shirt and your clothes and your limbs of body, you have to remove them. You have to wash them first before you pray.
So when they were in the battles in the time of prayers, they would remove the blood.
Yes. This is what we understood in general. They said some exceptions of the little drops of blood. But in general, yeah, blood is a najasa.
On the issue of picking between madhahib, what if there's one person who goes for each masala that he does, he looks at all the different madhahib,
and he picks the easiest opinion out of all of them. So it might be valid, but is this something recommended for someone who always looks for the easiest in every issue?
Okay, that's a good question. So, number one, as a general hukum, no, it is not recommended. Number two, it's not practical because he will never find it this way. Because this notion of one madhab is easy or madhab is not doesn't really exist. He will end up falling in some troubles in his own opinion, right? It's not going to be this absolute coincidence every single time he wants to pick an opinion. He will find an easy way for him. It's not going to work this way because usually there are conditions, usually there are limits, there are some prerequisites according to this madhab. We said you cannot single out the issue from a madhab and you just follow it and you forget about other prerequisites in the same madhab. So when you talk about the salah, and you want, okay, I'm going to pray Hanafi, it will tell you you need to take care of the wudu according to Hanafi school. Because the wudu is a prerequisite for salah, for example. Right? So it is not really practical. But in theory, let's say he can do that. His actions will be valid, but it's not recommended. Why it is not recommended? From a spiritual point of view. Because if he keeps doing this, he will end up doing haram and avoiding some obligatory things. The same thing in fiqh. In fiqh, we have a lot of things that recommended, sunnah, a lot of things that are makruh, that are reprehensible. Technically, you can skip the recommended things and you're not going to get sins. And you can do the makruh and you're not going to get sins. But we tell you, no, you're not recommended to do this. Because the one part of the philosophy of sunnah in Islam is to protect the obligatory things. Let's say, okay, I'm only going to pray the five times a day. I will never pray sunnah, I will never pray watr, duha, taraweeh, whatever sunnah. I'm not going to pray these things. That's okay, right? Technically by book, you're good. But you're more likely to skip some obligatory prayers from a spiritual point of view. And in a very high chance, it's a very high chance that you will do this. Even if you're good, you say, no, I will never do that. Again, technically you can. The guy came to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I will do this, I will never increase or decrease. لا أزيد ولا أنقص. He said, I will just commit to that. I'm going to pray 5 times, I'm going to pay the zakah, fast only 1 month a year, and that's it. He said, if I do this, I will enter the Jannah? The Prophet told him, yes. He said, okay, I will do that, I will never decrease or increase. Look at the response of the Prophet ﷺ after he left. He said, أفلح إن صدق. This guy's gonna be inshallah successful if he's truthful, if he's serious about what he's saying. But it's not easy. That's why the sunan, they are the shields of the obligations in Islam. Same thing with the makruh. If you do makruh a lot, you're more likely to fall in haram. Right? Actually, this it might lead to this. It's not an absolute result, but it might lead to this. So that's why you say, okay, don't also follow the easy things because that might lead you to like avoiding or skipping some obligatory things or actually following some haram things. So the scholars, they said it's not good to follow the rukhas. Even the concessions, they said لا تتتبع الرخص. Do not just follow the concessions that are there in the fiqh because of the spiritual side of this. Okay, empirical science methodology is not a source of a textual knowledge of religion. Who says true?
What do you mean by textual knowledge?
Understanding the text of the wahi. Understanding Quran or Sunnah. So who says true? Can I see hands who says it's true? Okay, so the rest are saying it's false. By assumption. So Abdul Malik, why is it false? So everybody who says it's false, that means it is a source of textual knowledge of religion. So Abdul Malik will explain to us why.
Why it's false?
Mm-hmm.
Why did it say it's false?
You didn't raise your hand. And that's non-verbal signification that you're saying it's false. This is the way logic works. So you have one chance to change your mind. Okay, we'll vote again. Who says yes? Who says true? You're still insisting. I made the vote again for you. Okay, so why is it false?
Nobody raised their hand.
No, you did raise your hand. There's just the front line there now. Okay, so why is it false?
The cameraman doesn't raise his hand.
Why is it false?
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay, anybody else? Did you raise your hand?
Yeah.
So it's true? Why is it true?
Well, in general, fiqh is not dependent on science. So sometimes it might help
Okay, if you remember in the introduction of the last lecture, we talked about the modern science methodology of understanding things, and we talked about the 4 steps of the prediction, the analysis, and the control, and these things, and the observation first. And I said these things are so important in the empirical field of science. But when you are analyzing a text, you do not need these things. You need another methodology, right? When you are you're trying to analyze an ayah in the Quran because you want to deduce a ruling out of this ayah. So you do need an empirical methodology to do this, right? Because you're dealing with a text, you're dealing with a language. Did you get what I'm saying? So that's the difference between the empirical approach works in a different field. This is the point. But when you come to understand a divine text, you need actually another methodology to understand it. That's the meaning of the question.
So it's true?
Yeah, it is true, yeah. Okay, the school of al-Ra'i, of al-Hadith, of transmission, had no interest in the analogical reasoning of the divine text. Who says it's true? Can I see hands, please? Nobody says it's true? Okay, who says it's false? Subhanallah. So, you
We just undecided on this one.
you're undecided? Why?
I couldn't really understand I don't know.
You remember the story of the 2 schools of thought? When we started the story of the Bani Qurayza, and then it developed to 2 dominant ways of understanding.
Yeah.
Some people were into the literal meaning of text, and some people were into more the analogical reasoning of the text, right? Ahlul Hadith, Ahlul Ra'i, the people of Hadith, the people of transmission, al-Riwayah. Transmission means the delivery of the text, of the Riwayat, the narrations of the Hadith. And Ahlul Ra'i, Ra'i means an opinion, the people of opinion, the people of reasoning. This is the label that we gave them. And we talked about the development of both in short, for sure, until they got in the peak of the development in the 4 schools of thought. You were like incorporated basically in the 4 schools of thought. So the people of al-Hadith who were more they're not literalists, but they were more interested into the literal meaning of the text. So they didn't have any interest in analogical reasoning. True or false? Okay, who says true again? We shouldn't be answering these things here. I'm assuming that you guys had these thoughts at home already, and then we're now just like going over it really quick. So again, anybody? Okay, those who say it's true. Okay, who says it's true? Do you have any justification for that? It's true?
Yeah.
Okay, why?
Because we said Ahlul Hadith, they go by just the text, itself, like what's written.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't do any qiyas and comparing things to what was in the book and what's happening right now. So just they go by what was written. That's it.
Okay, in the story of Bani Qurayza, hypothetically, which group was Ahlul Hadith?
The ones that went for the literal meaning.
Okay, which group? Who did what?
That prayed in.
In the way.
No, that prayed in.
Who prayed there?
Yeah.
Those are the people of Hadith. The people of Riwayah, right? The people of transmission. So this people, this group of, hypothetically, this group of the companions, they had no interest in analogical reasoning because he said, you pray there, so you have to pray there.
That's what they went by.
But that's reasoning. That's what they reasoned it.
Okay, yeah. Can we consider this as reasoning itself?
Yeah, well,
So if yeah, this would be false. Okay, so it is. So okay, it is false because I remember I mentioned this because again, the story is just an example. Don't take the story as the full demonstration of the 2 groups. But I said by the development of both methodologies, both used both methodology, right? Because the people of al-Hadith, they had for sure interest in it. Nobody would actually work on divine text without using analogical reasoning. That's impossible, right? And even the people of al-Ra'i, as they call them, the people of opinion or analogical reasoning, for sure they had so much interest in the literal meaning of the divine text. They wouldn't actually go for qiyas without going for the literal meaning first. Remember Abu Hanifa would say that. He said like, if there is an ayah that's clear, I'm just going to go for it. I won't need to go any other source or analogical reasoning if the ayah is just so clear about what it wants to deliver. So both actually incorporated both methodologies. It's about how did they list the priorities doing this. Maybe hypothetically, the people of transmission, they would pay much more attention to the literal meaning, and the people of Ra'i would pay much more attention to the analogical reasoning. But that doesn't mean that one of them rejects qiyas or one of them rejects the sunnah or rejects the text. And then again, they developed a lot in history, and they incorporated all these methodologies in the schools of thought. Okay, the conditions of an independent mujtahid are all related to their acquisition of knowledge. Who says true? Okay, who says false? Our neutral friends, what, do you have any other suggestions? Okay, who says it's false? Okay, why it's false?
Some of the other conditions for independent mujtahid is to be pious, to know the kind of the culture, the society that we live in. Most of them are related to seeking knowledge, but there are a few other criteria that are not.
Exactly. So it's false because there are other conditions that have to be met other than the actual. For sure, it's 95%. It's about the acquisition of knowledge, but there are some other conditions too. Okay, the last thing: a textual command can create both an obligation and a recommendation. True or false? Okay, who says it's false? Okay, why false?
Because like if it's an obligation, the fard it's known like for everyone. It's based like it's the base of everything. But like the things that has the mushtabahat or has an opinion in it, that's where we can say something like a textual thing. This is an obligation.
Okay, how can you understand the question?
Well, we just connect the command with obligation.
We can what?
We just connect the command with obligation.
Not necessarily. A command can work for both.
Can work.
Because recommendation is a command too.
Really?
Yes. A Sahabi said the Prophet ﷺ commanded me to pray witr and commanded me to pray duha. Amarani, and he used the word amara in Arabic language, which is the command. Right? And there are orders, we said there are commands in the Quran and the Sunnah that we held them for recommendation, not for obligation, and it is a command. And actually for permissibility, when he said like eat and drink, that's a command, literally in language, but it signifies like permissibility, for example. Right? So how do you read the question? How do you understand the question? When you read the question, you have two perspectives. So do you look at it in the process of making the ruling or the hukm itself? Or you're talking about the actual conclusion of the process of understanding the hukm? Right? So now I have a command. I've never investigated it yet. And I have a command in the Quran. Can it by default imply more than one thing? Right? If you remember, we talked about that. What is the default implication of obligations in the Quran? Of commands in the Quran. When there is a command in the Quran, what is the default meaning? What? Yeah, but what is the default implication of the command? When I'm telling you, do something, what is the default of the default meaning of this? Is that you are obliged to do it, or you are committed to do it, or you are allowed to do it? You're obliged to do it, right? You're obligated to do it. That's the default implication of a command in language, in the language of the Quran, and in the language of the Sunnah. So by default, it can imply more than one thing. That's the meaning. But when it comes to a conclusion, can it still imply more than one thing or no? Because we have investigated and we found out that this command is for obligation, or this command is for recommendation, or whatever. It can't be both at the end. Can it be for obligation for some people and recommendation for other people?
Because if you leave an obligation, technically you're committing a sin, right?
Technically, you what?
You're committing a sin.
Okay.
But if it's a recommendation, then you have no choice.
Yeah, okay, so again, that's why we looked at it from two different perspectives. I'm still in the process of understanding the ruling. So you said yes, because by default we have more than one option. But by default we have more than one possible option that we will end up having by the deduction of the ruling of this. Right? But when we came to the conclusion after the investigation and understanding the evidences, we came out, do we have to come out with one ruling, which is obligation or recommendation, for example? Or can we come up with, okay, it's obligation for some people and recommendation for some other people, or an obligation for certain circumstances and recommendation for other circumstances. This is the way you look at this question. So in general, yes, it can create both obligation and recommendation, in general. For sure, if you look at it from the very beginning of the process of understanding, for sure, because again, we have the different default implications, and even after you come up with the hukum, it depends on circumstances, it depends on people, it depends on a lot of other factors, you can actually come up with like obligation for some situations and recommendation for other situations too. Okay, please feel free to add any feedback or comment. Thank you. Yes. What? Results? Okay, we'll send them tonight. We'll release them tonight, inshallah. Results this quiz are actually much lower than the last one. What? Okay, we'll share it with you. We'll share it with you, inshallah, tonight. But this one was actually like harder than the last one. This one is harder. That one was. Okay. Which is good. Okay, so today, inshallah, we'll talk about introduction to the Islamic creed or Islamic theology or Aqidah, as we know it to be the ilm of Aqidah. Introduction break. Just to introduce to start the lecture. Okay, so we have these 7 points that we want to talk about as the outline of the lecture. Some general questions that we need to understand about our existence in this life, and some introductions to the concept of Aqidah in Islam, and then we'll talk about the 10 principles of Ilm al-Aqidah as we talk about any other science before. Okay, why are you here? What? إعمال العقل. To use your intellect.
No.
I said إعمال العقل. That's what I hear. إعمار الأرض. Okay. Okay. وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. Okay, so for worship, to worship Allah. That's the main purpose of creation. Okay. So the purpose of worship is one of the purposes of life. Okay. So when I asked that question, why are you here? Did you understand it? Why are you here in the class? Why are you here in life in general? Or like, how do you understand the question? I was expecting that question, but you guys don't care. So I don't know if you had a default understanding, or I don't know. So why are you here in class? That was my first actually question. Why did you come today? So that's your parents. Okay, that's an honest answer. Okay, so actually I want answers for both meanings. Like, why are you here in class? I'm serious. And why are you here in life? What are you doing in life? They both go hand in hand. Okay, let's start with the more universal one. So why are you in life? Other than that, your parents. And you are the Khalifa, the successors of Allah, as he said in the Quran. Okay, what else? Okay, what brings you here? Class. To seek knowledge. What brings you here in life? Okay, I just don't want to make it this very philosophical question of, okay, what is the purpose of life? And we spend all the lecture discussing what is the purpose of life. And we might end up with no purpose. So is there a purpose for life? What is the purpose of life? Worshiping Allah. What else? And this is purpose number one and list of purposes, or that's the only purpose? What? To test you. That Allah tests us. That's what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. But this is the purpose of life from our angle, or that He created us to test us?
No, like this current life that we're in, before the Akhirah, to test us, before we're going to the original offer.
Yeah, but okay, so again, that's from the angle of the Godship that Allah, He created us because He wanted to test us? Or how can we incorporate that as our own purpose of life? From the human being perspective, you have a purpose of life. So can it be the test? Okay, so why are you alive? Because what? Because He made us live. So is there a purpose? What is the purpose? To worship Him.
To take care of
To take care of what? To take care of the earth or the ard. Okay. Yes. Okay. So this ayah is the one who created life and death to test you who's going to be better in work, who's going to be better in terms of the righteous work in this life. So لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ, so that He would test you. That's actually a form of like what is the purpose of your creation. In language, let's call it ta'leel. It's the cause of your creation. Is that because He wanted to test you. So you can tell one of the purposes that we were created, but not from our own angle, that He created us. One of the main reasons to test us. And this is clearly in the Quran. Right? He created life and death. And it's a test for you. And He told you that you are living in the lowest of the worlds. That's the lowest. Right? There's no lower than this. So regardless if you're happy with your life or not, that's the lowest that you can get. Right? So Allah created multiple worlds. There is this life, and then there's afterlife, there's death, and there's afterlife, and there's the hereafter, and there's Yawm al-Qiyamah, all these things. This is the lowest. This is the worst. Like there's no actually worse than this. This is the way. And this could be one of the meanings of ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. We return him back to the lowest of the low. For sure you still can be much higher spiritually. But materialistically, this life is the lowest thing. This is the way a Muslim looks at this life. Not to be pessimistic or to be depressed, but to understand the reality of this life. It's a transitional period that you're here to do certain things, and you're going to move sooner or later, and you have another challenge that you're going to face. So you need to prepare yourself for this. Because this thing is about a test. Even if you're happy, you can still be happy, you can still enjoy it, right? But again, at one point, you will lose all of these things, and you will be held accountable, and you will be asked about all these things you had in this life. So you need to be ready for this. This point in Islam is so important to understand what is the difference between life and what is afterlife. Exactly when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the people, the human beings and animals, for example. Right? In general, He gave the human beings the honor to be better than animals. Right? He said, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We have honored the people, the sons of Adam. Right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, part of the test He made for us is that He created us in a kind of, let's say there are classes of creation. And you are in the middle class of creation. And He created the animals below you because He honored you with the intellect. And He created the angels above you from the perspective that they never disobey Allah, they do everything Allah wants them to do. لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. Right? And He made you in the middle. Let's explore the ayat in the Quran and the Sunnah. You'll find sometimes some ayat would liken you to an animal, and sometimes would liken you to an angel. Right? So they would find an ayah would say, فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ إِن تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْهِ يَلْهَثْ أَوْ تَتْرُكْهُ يَلْهَثْ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the example of this person who's wasting his deeds and a'mal is like just the dog, who doesn't know exactly where is its own destination that he is going to, and at the same time is exhausting himself. That doesn't mean dog is a bad thing, but just He's giving you the example that if you are not using your intellect that I gifted you with, you're not doing the right job I created you for. Then you find the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith who would say, Al-Mahiru bil-Qur'ani ma'a safarat al-kiram al-barra. The one who is excellent in the Quran in terms of recitation and tajweed and ahkam, inshallah he'll be among the angels of Allah on the Day of Judgment. So He raised him from the level, this middle class of creation, you imagine it this way, to a higher level of the angels. While the other one, he was like the dog of no benefit. For that case, the ayah was actually talking about. So it's still new, you are created in the middle. And the more you improve yourself spiritually, you can be elevated to the rank of the angels who are constantly worshiping Allah. They do no mistakes. They always obey Him. If you're going astray and away from His path, you're going lower to the level of animals who do not have an intellect, do not understand what they're doing, and they just live in for the sake of life. Right? This is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like, or some of the ayat and the hadith are trying to portray this life to you. So still you, again, life is the lowest. You are in the lowest of the low. There is no worse than this. That's your life. You have some struggles. Again, you might be happy sometimes. You will not be happy other times. But that's the reality that you need to face, and then you need to be ready for the hereafter. So when you reflect on why are you here and what brings you here, these points come to your mind. When you reflect on these points, you appreciate again the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you appreciate the ni'am of Allah. And then you use this intellect that He gifted you with to understand how can you approach this life and how can you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you need your aql. You need this intellect. You need this mind as a process to understand. That's why you need logic. When you talk about logic with usul al-fiqh, you need logic with aqidah too, to understand just general basic things of thinking. You need to understand that logic, for example, would teach you how to differentiate between some axiomatic principles and some other deductions that are based on multi perspectives of thinking. That could be relative in terms of the conclusions. That is not an absolute fact. Logic would tell you that we say logic is about tasawurat wa tasdiqat. You have the apprehensions and you have the affirmation between meanings. And then through these apprehensions and affirmations of meanings, you build like propositions, and then you build analogies. And then you come up with certain and sure conclusions. This is what logic is about in general. When people tried, I mean people like human beings in general, when they tried to prove God and to understand the reality that we are created and there is a khaliq, they went through multiple approaches to do this. Some philosophers went through only the logical, the pure logical way, and they said, for example, okay, every effect needs a cause, and this universe it has to be an effect of something. So there has to be a cause for this effect, because logic says so, or an axiomatic principle says every effect needs a cause. So we believe in the existence of God through this way. Some people said no, we can actually reflect on this life. You find how beautiful and wonderful the oceans and the seas are, how beautiful the sky is, the orbits and the planets and all these things are related to astronomy, for example. Some people would reflect on the way human beings are created and functioning. These different things, we call it dalilul ibda', how the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are really something magnificent that you think it's impossible that just it came out of nothing, or actually a human being created this. So that was actually another like approach that some people or some philosophers took. Some people try to prove God through just some spiritual exercises, right? Some old notions and philosophies use the yoga and these things to just come up with a conclusion. Okay, there is a superpower that is called spirituality, and they are inside the human beings, and those things should actually lead the intellect of human beings to understand the reality that there is a God through just some spiritual exercise. That was another approach that people thought of to prove Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And some people said, okay, we believe in God because all people believe in God, or majority of people believe in God. We just follow whatever people are saying, and we're gonna believe in God. All these are different approaches. Someone that is purely logical, some approach that is purely logical. I mean logical, that means only the mere thinking of logic. It's not even by observation or thinking or reflecting on something else. Some people went through the ibda', how the creations, or how things in this life are really in a very well-ordered process of creation. Some people use the spiritual like route to get to that conclusion, and some people just followed whatever other people believe in. And we had other approaches too. Which one of these approaches is the best? What is the best and most efficient way of proving that there is God that I need to worship? Okay, so think about this question and we'll have a break for 5 minutes. And then we answer this question after the break. Okay? Jazakumullah khair.